Okay, Michael Steele, you were quite animated when I saw you in the hallway earlier about that debate.
Trying to be
I'm gonna see what you're gonna tell me. You think of the debate that you told me in the hallway. What was your take on the debate, Michael Steele? Go ahead. What was the key moment?
She spanked that ass. I'm sorry. That's what she did. She came and she walked on that stage. Look, for me, it's one of those things that you didn't realize happened until about 20 to 30 minutes into the debate. And it's what everyone's talked about. And for me, it was the pivotal, most important moment of the debate was when they were introduced. And Donald Trump came out, and if you watch, go back, I tell everybody to go back and watch this. He comes out, he goes direct to the podium. He is not, usually you go to the middle of the floor to greet your opponent. He went to the opponent, he had no intention of shaking her hand. She walked across the stage right into his space, stuck her hand out, and said, Kamala Harris. First off, I'm saying my name so you get it right when you say it, which he never said once during the entire debate. Two, he never looked at her during the entire debate. And there was this point about 20 to 30 minutes in where that moment for me hit and resonated because she owned that stage from that very first moment. Very much to what Molly was just saying, that what she did was she prosecuted when she needed to prosecute, and all other times she was presidential. Yeah. And he looked small, he looked withered, he looked beaten, but most importantly, he looked pissed. And there's nothing worse than a pissed bigot on the stage with a woman he can't control. And she gave him no quarter for that. She gave him no room. And even in the one moment where she talked while he was talking, and you knew it was the moment he wanted, and he rehearsed it, and he was so anxious to say it, when he looked at her, he goes, I'm speaking. I'm speaking.
Does that sound familiar? Then he said, does that sound familiar?
Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, he was feeling clever. Yeah.
He was feeling in his oats. He was clever, and there was nothing.
Yeah.
You could hear a collective, what did he just do? Across the country, even amongst his own people. So I think tonight was definitive for her. Tonight, Kamala Harris showed that she was not just a vice president, that she was, in fact, ready to be president on foreign policy, on the economy, on domestic social issues, on issues, sensitive issues around abortion and race. Yeah. She had a presidential vein that popped out very clearly for the country to see. And Donald Trump, the only thing he could do was stand there and look at the floor, sulk, pout. And on Twitter, the only thing MAGA could complain about was, oh, ABC, why are they fact-checking only Donald Trump? Because he was the only one lying on the stage.
Hi from New York, I'm Jen Psaki. Thank you for sticking with us for another hour of special coverage following the first and so far only presidential debate. We'll see if there's another one. I'm a little skeptical. Between, of course, Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. Over the course of 90 minutes, one candidate, Kamala Harris, absolutely owned the other guy on the stage. She talked about issues that people actually care about, like the economy, abortion rights, and democracy itself. Well, the other guy, Donald Trump, seemed unprepared, quite grumpy, and often incoherent. At times, the vice president could do nothing but laugh or stare aghast at the ranting and raving from the other side of the stage. The kind of rambling free association that many Americans have not heard since Donald Trump left office nearly 4 years ago. What's more, the ex-president proved once again that he is the impulse control of a toddler. Over and over again, Harris laid rhetorical traps for the former president. And over again, Trump took the bait.
I'll tell you something. He's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
What you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom.
Let me respond as to the rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies.
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that.
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States. And world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump.
Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump.
So you saw a bunch of it there. We'll play more throughout the course of the next hour. But basically, to summarize it, Trump praised dictators, took credit for ending Roe v. Wade, refused to say he would not sign a national abortion ban, lied about immigrants hunting down your pets for dinner. Yes, that actually happened, and we're going to talk more about that as well. He praised the January 6th insurrectionists and repeated his big lie of a stolen 2020 election. Vice President Harris, on the other hand, looked forward.
As a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Now, in case you didn't see the totality of the debate, I can tell you, Donald Trump did not offer a competing vision for the future. I mean, maybe because he doesn't have a vision for the future. He doesn't even have, as he claimed, concepts of a plan. Again, something he actually said. Ultimately, winning a debate, this is important, doesn't win an election. Just ask John Kerry and Hillary Clinton. They won all the debates. They did not become president. The polls remain extraordinarily close. But if you were on the fence, sitting on your couch tonight, not sure who to vote for this November, it's difficult to see how Donald Trump made the case in this debate, made you want to vote for him, that he should be your next commander-in-chief. And for what it's worth, Vice President Harris won over at least one Pennsylvania, and a pretty important one. As if things could not get any better for her and Tim Walz, immediately after the debate, they received the coveted Taylor Swift endorsement. This is from her endorsement. Quote, I'm voting for Kamala Harris because she fights for the rights and causes I believe need a warrior to champion them. I think she's a steady-handed, gifted leader, and I believe we can accomplish so much more in this country if we are led by calm and not chaos. Signing her statement as J.D. Vance's worst nightmare, a, quote, childless cat lady. That one's going to really haunt him. Joining me here on set are the wonderful, fabulous co-hosts of MSNBC's The Weekend, Michael Steele, Simone Sanders Townsend, and Alicia Menendez. Also with us is former Obama speechwriter and co-host of Pod Save America, Jon Favreau, who is with us remotely. Okay, Jon, let me start with you because we were texting during this debate. There were so many good moments. We just went through a number of them. If you're the Harris campaign, you have to figure out kind of what you're going to push where, what's on a T-shirt, what becomes an ad. But this is all about ultimately not winning the debate, winning the election. So what would you, if you were on the campaign, pull from tonight to push out as aggressively as possible with money behind it to the American people?
I mean, you just mentioned this, but I think the line where he said, I don't have a plan, I have the concepts of a plan. And look, Kamala Harris prosecuted the case tonight many times where she said to Donald Trump, or she said to the audience, which is even better than talking to Donald Trump, she said to the people at home, he doesn't have a plan for you. He doesn't care about you. And then she would talk about her plans for the economy. And look, we're going to play all the really fun moments where she baited him, and that's going to be good for the next week or so. But I do think that the real damage she did was expose him as someone who just really hasn't thought about what he's going to do for the American people for the next 4 years because he only thinks about himself. And she laid out her plans, whether it was on the economy, bringing down costs, whether it was on protecting reproductive rights. But look, Donald Trump has participated in 7 presidential debates, countless primary debates, and he has never been beaten as badly as he was tonight by Kamala Harris. And that takes so much preparation on her behalf. She really prepared for this debate. She knew what she was going to do. She came with a plan. She made the whole debate about Donald Trump when she could have been on the defensive and he could have put her on the defensive. And so she really executed the plan that she came with. But also, he's really lost a step. I mean, when he was ranting and raving in 2016 with Hillary Clinton and he was lying all the time, but he did make some sort of sense then. And tonight, there were just long stretches where he was completely incoherent and you couldn't even follow what he was talking about.
it was very difficult. I agree with you completely that I think Donald Trump's he's debated a lot of people, a lot of Republicans, Democrats too, of course. That was the best orchestrated debate against Donald Trump that we have seen, hands down. Simone, you know the vice president better than all of the rest of us. You have staffed her, you've prepped her, you've been a part of the debate preps, all of the things. What was the moment you were watching tonight, or maybe there's more than one, there probably was, where you thought, like, yes, that is like the American people seeing who she is and what she's capable of?
Well, I frankly thought her entire, debates are part policy, part performance. Every debate is. And I think that she hit the marks on the policy and the performance. People are all like, oh, she won, he lost, and da-da-da. I think, frankly, as you know, when you grade a debate, the question is, did you do what you said you wanted to do when you were in the preparation talking about the debate? And did she come across clear and strong? Check, yes. Did she get her policy positions out on what she believes on the economy, which is important to voters across the board, not just these people in the middle? Black voters, young people, women of every, race, people, everybody cares about the economy. Check, yes. Did she adequately counter the lies? Yes. Absolutely, yes. There was more she could have said, but then she wouldn't have done the thing about her own policy. Did she find moments to turn to the camera and speak directly to the American people at home and let them know, say, hey, find your camera.
I love that you're doing it now.
You know what I mean? Like, that's what you got to do. You got to find your camera and then talk to your camera. Yes, yes, and yes. Did she bait Donald Trump into a back and forth? Absolutely. Did she make him look unhinged and she looked in control? Absolutely. It was Donald Trump having her conversation tonight. Absolutely. But to your point, debates do not win elections. They can influence them, for sure. And I'm very happy that Jacob Soboroff did that focus group right after, because there were people were texting like, what in the world? What is wrong with these voters? Now, let me tell you, that's most people in America right now. If the election were held today, I do not think Vice President Harris will win it. I think she can absolutely win in November. But a month and a half ago, Joe Biden was a Democratic nominee. So there is work this campaign needs to do. The campaign knows they need to do this work, and the vice president knows they need to do the work. That's why she continues to say that she is the underdog in this race, because she is out there talking to people and she is looking at their internals, and she knows what the streets are saying and where the streets are right now and where they need to go.